All About Beer receives underwriting support from Common Roots Brewing Company. They understand the importance of independent journalism in the beer space, and their support helps fund original work. Learn how you can affordably support journalists by visiting allaboutbeer.com/support.
Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl, and I'm excited about this panel this week. It was recorded live during Black Fly Beer Camp at the Great Camp Sagamore in New York's Adirondack Mountains, and it features brewers from Scalehouse, Samuel Adams, and Wildbloom Brewing. And it's all about inspiration and recipe development. You're going to learn a lot. First up, though, please keep up with all that we have going on by following our social media. We're at All About Beer across the major platforms. And if you have comments, guest suggestions, or just want to reach out, you can always email me at johnhall@allaboutbeer.com. And speaking of email, if you go to our website, you can sign up for our newsletter there. That's one of the best ways that we can get all we're producing right to your eyeballs. So go to allaboutbeer.com and sign up for the newsletter and poke around a little bit. There's some articles, there's some other podcasts, there's, cool stuff there. So check it out. Everything we do, it's supported by you. If you go to our website, again, that's allaboutbeer.com/support, you can learn how just a few bucks can have a huge impact in supporting original journalism in the beer space. There's the underwriting campaign that you hear about at the top of the show every week, breweries that are supporting us and then supporting original journalism in the beer space. We have a Patreon where a few bucks can go a long way, or you can advertise. And on that note, thanks to this episode's sponsors.
Calling all hopheads. Dogfish Head's 60-minute IPA is a fantastically hoppy India Pale Ale that's beautifully balanced thanks to their unique continual hopping method. Delivering a pungent hop flavor that isn't crushingly bitter, 60 Minute is continually hopped throughout the boil for a full 60 minutes. Starting to see where the name comes from? Check out dogfish.com to learn more and to find some 60 Minute near you. Dogfish Head Craft Brewery, Milton, Delaware. Please drink responsibly.
If you're running a brewery, owner or operator, Beer 30 by The Fifth Ingredient is the ultimate command center. The most powerful brewery management software on the market, Beer 30 handles the entire brewing workflow, from recipe development to production. Once your beer is brewed and ready, it seamlessly manages your inventory and streamlines your brewery's sales and distribution, all in the same easy-to-use platform. Beer 30 lets you get back to the beer and to the people that made you fall in love with this industry in the first place. And no other brewery management software gives you the ability to truly master your business and get the insights that you need to thrive in an increasingly competitive industry. Visit thefifthingredient.com/allaboutbeer today to learn more and receive 3 free months of Beer 30. Today's episode is brought to you by Stomp Stickers. Stomp makes it easy for breweries to stock up on the essential packaging and promotional supplies all in one place. From beer labels and keg collars to coasters, beer boxes, and more, they've got you covered. Plus, every product is backed by their 100% satisfaction guarantee, and their full-time support squad is ready to help anytime. Visit stompstickers.com and use code THINKBEER for 15% off of your first order. A few weeks back, All About Beer was invited to program a weekend at Great Camp Sagamore in the Adirondack Mountains. So we invited a smart group of brewers to pour during Black Fly Beer Camp weekend, and we held some panels as well. This recording is from one of those panels, and it's a discussion on what can drive good recipe development and new ideas for creativity in beer making. So I'm joined by Megan Parisi of Samuel Adams, Devin Bush of Wildbloom Beer, and Tony Cordova of Scalehouse Brewing. They go over the how and the why of making new beers, as well as translating those ideas to sustainable and effective brewing practices. And somehow we spend a lot of time talking about lavender. Recorded live at the Great Camp Sagamore in Racket Lake, New York, here's our conversation. Well, so thanks, Tony, because this was your panel. You came up with this idea, and I was like, all right, great. We're going to invite other brewers to share your great idea. Because I love when we talk about creativity and inspiration, when brewers get a conversation going amongst each other. There's new ideas that flow, and I think we're sort of all the richer for it. But you did my job essentially. You came up with this outline that starts with understanding the why.
Yeah.
Of creativity and inspiration. And I think that those are easy words to throw out there, hard to define. But you're going into the why of it. So let's start there.
Yeah, every beer, you have to know why you're brewing it. That could be a variety of reasons, obviously, like your taste, customers' taste, the ingredients that you have, the seasonality, any of those things that kind of go into it. But you really have to start with why you are making this beer. Because if you have purpose for it, that's when you're going to actually execute the thing that you're looking to achieve. And we're going to go through a bunch of things that can help you find out why you're doing the thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
And I'll start off usually it's obviously an open line that I need to fill, and I generally start with something that I would want to drink. I'm filling a gap. Let's say I have all these beers on tap, and I don't have a West Coast IPA. A lot of people like West Coast IPAs. Maybe that's a good place to start. And then you can begin the process of building the ideas that you want to express in that beer. That could also be something wacky. Say, for example, a beer like lavender is blooming right now, and you have a friend that grows lavender and says, "Hey, I have a lot of lavender. Do you want some?" And you say, "That sounds like a great idea. What goes well with lavender? Maybe something like Belgian or something spring-like or whatever." Those are the kinds of things that you look at into it those are the things that I look at when I am trying to understand why I'm making this beer. And then I generally go to my books. And I see what the books say. So let's pretend like I have decided to make a spring saison with lavender. The first book I always go to is Radical Brewing by Randy Mosher. This copy is the first brewing book I ever got 15 years ago, and it has stayed with me the whole time, and it's the best brewing book. If you are a home brewer, you should have this book. It's the best book.
Yes.
It is so inspiring, and it's so interesting. I'm sure you all would agree, and that's where you kind of go. And this book is great because it'll have a lot of information in there about the wacky ingredients that you're using, and that's not the only book. There's plenty of other books and other resources, but you're at a point where you have lavender in your beer. How do I use it?
I like that. And I want to dive into that a little bit more. But Megan, I wanted to ask you because when you all approach the why of creativity. I mean, Sam Adams Boston Beer Company has for 42 years, 43 years now, 41, has been, trying different things. I mean, those very early days, if it was a beer recipe or a beer style that existed, the brewery was going to brew it at some point. And so, and that was a claim to fame for a long time, but pushing innovation forward, pushing flavors forward. When you approach creativity in your downtown brew house, are there things that you have to keep in mind? Tony's talking about how West Coast IPA is popular, and I like West Coast IPA, but when you have a lot of tourists coming through, when you have the Sam Adams name on top of things, are there not guidelines or guardrails, because that would impede creativity in some ways, but are there things that you have to consider when you're starting to create a new recipe?
Yeah, definitely a lot to consider. But I actually wanted to just mention I've got a lavender beer on right now with Earl Grey tea and some cocoa nibs.
Sounds awesome.
So it's actually really, and it's been a remarkable seller. And it was one of these, brewing with lavender is a big risk because, like I said, use it sparingly because it could go soapy very, very quickly. But this is part about knowing the ingredients and knowing what it can do. So you want to take risks with that. But specifically about the tap room versus our primary, new product development or R&D, because I did that for several years before we opened up this tap room. Mm-hmm. And that way, you can do tons of test batches. I was able to do, I had like little 10-gallon fermenters. I could take the same batch of wort, split it up and have, 8 different fermentations of the same base, wort. So all things being equal, I could try a bunch of different ingredients or different hops and things that way. Here, for the tap room, it's pretty much, you got to know what you're doing. So you're going to take risks. And it does take the guardrails off a little bit, which is very freeing, because at the tap room we don't have the same I guess it's really kind of limitation, to be honest, about worrying if something is going to be feasible in nationwide distribution, because that's a whole different set of considerations when you have to think about actually brewing something, making it stable, getting it to all 50 states. Will that happen? If I'm just able to brew something just like any other brew pub, you're brewing, you're serving it right over the taps, right there on site. It's not going to have a shelf life. We're not doing anything to it. No stabilization beyond like normal brewing. So yeah, you can definitely experiment. But we have 20 tap lines, so that's a lot to fill. 8 of them are going to be lines that people recognize, which it's really comforting for people that are coming in that only know Boston Lager and the seasonal perhaps. So you see something familiar, maybe that's the first thing you want to go to is like, hey, I'm in Boston. I'm going to have a Boston Lager at this home. But then you look at the other 12 lines and see that's a whole lot of stuff I never would have thought that Sam Adams did.
Yeah.
So our mission there really, or at least my understanding of our mission is to kind of reacquaint the public with the innovative spirit that was always behind, the Sam Adams brand. Sort of really getting back to our roots of exploring boundaries and pushing them, and playing with different ingredients, seeing what we like, and having an immediate sense of what other people might like too.
I like that.
I think on your point also, being really good at recipe development is also about mitigating those risks. So if you're using an ingredient like Earl Grey or something like that, how is tea made? So you'd figure out like how tea is made and what gives it the properties that it does. But then also, if you're good at that, the nice thing is that you have your tap room that has your 10 beers that are all your cores, and then you have your 3 or 4 that are your innovation ones, and you have the customers that come in and say, oh, what's new? Oh, I want to try that. I know it's going to be good. Oh, that's wacky. I'm willing to try new things. And I think that's a goal for anybody who's in innovation, because as much as we love making the same stuff all the time, getting to explore our own personality and the creativity that we have is where that makes us feel like artists.
Yeah. So, Devin, with your beers, 99% New England grown. Mm-hmm. And when I visited your tap room last year, and I'm going to botch this, but you gave me a really lovely pale ale that had these bright, vibrant flavors to it. And you're like, oh, this is New England Simcoe, I believe.
Maine Grown Cascade.
Yep. I knew I was going to botch it.
Yep.
But it is so unlike Pacific Northwest grown Cascade.
It's very different. It's bright pops of candied orange throughout it.
That's what it was, yeah.
Where you're talking about, you get that orange blossomy from Pacific Northwest, but it's, it's growing climate and soil and this and that. And like speaking on the creativity side of it, that's kind of most of our beers I design around a single place or thing that I want to be doing. And then I write a flavor profile out of what I want that perfect sip to taste like. And then I kind of reverse engineer that. Or the other process is, like that one, the guy who owns the hop farm wanted a beer for his best friend's wedding. And he said, make a beer that showcases my favorite hop we grow for this wedding. So it was all based around just showcasing that one ingredient.
Yeah.
So it kind of, for me, the process is either one of those two things. It's either I have an ingredient-led thing that I tried, tasted, or want to showcase, or I have a thought of a beer that I want to drink at a thing or doing a thing.
Yeah. Both Megan and Tony are nodding along with this.
About, what if I had the glass, what do I want in this glass?
Yep.
And sort of that reverse engineering.
Yep. So like the beer that we have right here, this Spelt Lager. So we would go do this charity wiffle ball tournament every year, and it was kind of reverse engineering. And what would I want to be drinking at that? Playing wiffle ball in August, in the sun, in the heat. Then I wrote out the flavor profile where I wanted that touch of lemon, a nice doughy texture to it, that right through exactly what I want. And then out comes this beer from knowing the ingredients that are going into it.
Yeah. And I want to bring them back in just a second, but there's got to be a challenge in when Tony's pointing at some of these books, right, where it's Cascade is Cascade is Cascade until it's Maine grown, and now the book doesn't necessarily help.
No.
And
I would say basically no. Like, you can go through, and on different ingredient, like let's say lavender, we have a lavender triple on the docket because there's a lavender farm right near us. I can go and check out dosing and what other people did. But even that for me is helpful, but I'll typically go in and I'll hot steep a thing, figure out where bitterness extracts from it, and then I'll take a beer that I have that would be similar, buy something off the shelf, and I'll dose it with a tincture to figure out what's a appropriate dosing amount. Where do I want this to be?
Tinctures are a good way to go if you are messing around with stuff.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
man.
making tinctures out of your ingredients, or also, like you said, getting either a commercial beer that's similar or something also very, very neutral, like where's a Miller Lite or something, very, very light, and dosing the ingredients into that so that you can at least see what it would taste like in beer, not just the ingredient itself too. Just like, maybe it's not the base beer that you're imagining, but just seeing how does it actually react with the components that actually will comprise a beer.
Yeah. There's got to be a challenge, though, and let's just talk about Lavender for a second, because I don't know much about it, but now all three of you are brewing with this. We did not have a pre-production meeting on this conversation. But these days there is a general understanding by most consumers that if you say, okay, this is my mango IPA, it has to taste like what people believe mango tastes like. Or, this is my blueberry IPA and it's candied blueberry, not like the real thing. Or
Peach rings, not peach.
Exactly. Yeah, Jolly Rancher flavor versus, raspberry versus the real thing as well.
I think a good example would be like rhubarb. If you have like a rhubarb beer, everybody thinks it's going to be sweet and strawberry-y. It's like, actually, if you eat rhubarb, it does not taste like that at all. Yeah, and sour, which is good, but like the customer perception.
Right. So when we can talk about lavender, or we can talk about other ingredients as well, but when you're making some of these beers that have these ingredients in them, that people think they know what it tastes like, but that it's not the grocery store candy aisle version of that flavor. Yeah.
I think it's customer dependent.
Okay.
Like there's certainly a customer that wants it to be the most aggressive form of the thing. Like let's say if you have rosemary on a label, they want to be knocked over the head with rosemary. But we're also finding that 80% of those people really don't want that. They're just not talking to you. They don't want to be hit over the head with the flavor. They want it to be a part of the puzzle altogether, and they're just not nearly as vocal.
Yeah. And so, Megan, when you're putting a recipe together like that, because I've had the beers at the pub, I've had your beers before, they are nuanced, they are layered. It isn't, here's our Swedish fish imperial stout, and yeah.
I mean, you have to think about, again, it is, who are your customers? I mean, that is for one, like who are your customers? Who are the people that you're trying to reach? What's actually going to sell for yourself? And then what's your kind of your own personal ethos in making beer? Do you want to be constantly extreme and really have that like in your face? If this says strawberry, I want it to taste like I just opened up some strawberry preserves, as opposed to like the balance and nuance of strawberries and different points of ripening, and again, that nuance.
Yeah.
So who are you? Some of it's identity. Who are you in making beer?
And yeah, but there's also a weird thing with certain ingredients. So we're in lavender season now. Is that what you said? What? Yeah.
Well,
it appears.
I mean, Devin was saying, right?
It's not too far off right now.
Okay. Oh yeah, no, we got to get a bottle opener for you.
If you ever want to know when
Jason's
something's
gotcha.
in season, this book called The Flavor Bible is one of the most important culinary
He's
books
right behind you.
ever written. I also highly recommend you get this. It has a list of every ingredient, pretty much every ingredient on the planet, when it is in season and what it pairs well with. So I highly recommend that. So we could look up lavender right now and it would tell us.
So, but here's the thing, right? So when lavender is ready and it's quote unquote lavender season for folks, or strawberry season, or all of that, and you're working with those fresh ingredients, your beer is not necessarily ready at the peak of season because it's going to need time in the fermenter. It's going to need time to get out there. And so it's sort of off the calendar a little bit as well. Whereas, somebody's, fake lavender beer or, potpourri soap, whatever they're putting in, can be out at the peak of the season to kind of grab that zeitgeist. And it's like, oh, well, lavender season was 6 weeks ago. Yeah.
I think you're giving people a lot of credit for knowing that.
Am I?
I mean, we have pumpkin beers in July. So.
Yes. But then when those pumpkin beers come out in October or even better November, You know, like it's like, oh, it's not pumpkin season anymore. You know, it's not
But the pumpkins were
95
fresh
degrees.
but the pumpkins were fresh when you got them.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
like,
Exactly.
well, were they?
Yeah. but is there?
There's definitely a disconnect there where, you know, if you're a person that's using all extracts on things, you can produce whatever you want, whenever you want. But there's a point to, like for us, we try and communicate where our ingredients are coming from and what we're using. So the educational component's not hard for us. So like, because that is what we do, if we're saying, oh, we got it from this farm, it's in this season, this is what we're doing with it, that's easy for us to communicate.
And I feel like going back to what we're talking about with identity and who we are as brewers and how any home brewer in here is, if you feel passionately about like that seasonality, fresh ingredients, I think the spirit of craft beer is built around local, built around seasonality, built around those things, then what your passion and your identity is absolutely going to come through in your beer. And I've seen it. I see it all the time. 2 people, 3 people can make the same recipe, and they can come out differently, and they have different techniques. They have different ideas that go into it.
Yeah.
So keeping true to your identity, I think, is very important.
Yeah. I mean, you're nodding along, Megan, on that one. Yeah. Then that scores with you and what you're doing.
Absolutely does, yeah.
So where do you look for inspiration? Is it other brewers? Is it the drink space in general? Is it culinary? I mean, there's so many avenues that you can open up here, but, you know, Tony, we'll start with you with, you know, where do you look for? And I mean, not everything that's going to cross your palate is going to be like, oh, I need to turn that into a beer.
Yeah, and not to be like too negative, but I feel like especially since the craft beer boom is like kind of come and gone, the inspiration behind making a beer has been a little hard, especially with New England IPAs. I was recently worked at a brewery where we specialize in New England IPAs, and when we would do collaborations or they say, hey, can you make a New England IPA? It was just impossible. So, you know, like you're just like, all right, well, Citrus Simcoe Mosaic, I don't know, like a little bit more Simcoe, I don't know. And so that kind of stuff was really, really hard. And it was kind of discouraging also. But I find inspiration when I go out and I talk to people, I talk to my colleagues. I mean, there's so many things. Even going outside of beer is a very, very good way to do it. Talk to the winemakers, talk to the coffee roasters, do a cupping. Everybody in here, if you're into tasting beer, do a cupping. It is fascinating. It's a coffee cupping. It's a fascinating experience. And you know, judging beer is also a great way to get inspired because you learn more about the things that you like. You learn more about the culture and you know, when I go to a cocktail bar, Liquid Intelligence, the third book I brought, you should all read this too. David Arnold, it's all about cocktails. Maybe you're like, oh, I've been really enjoying dark and stormies lately. Why not try to make a beer that has dark and stormy traits like some molasses and some pineapple and some ginger, and maybe you can kind of like create something that is inspired that way. So, you know, those are just a small amount of things, but and some examples, but I think those go really far.
And that also probably scratches the creativity itch or the brewer itch when you know that you also have your, you know, 3 or 4 cores that you have to make, or the beers that, you know, are expected in the tap room because they sell well and all of that. You know, messing around with a dark and stormy beer, you know, kind of just keeps some of the monotony at bay.
Yeah, and honestly, that's a pretty easy thing to communicate to a customer, more or less, because like most people know what a dark and stormy is, rum and ginger beer. So like they can be like, oh, it's a beer that's kind of like that. That's an easy sell. And so then, or like a margarita type beer, or like using a beer like an Ona beer, like a beer that uses Syrah grapes or something. You're already adding something familiar to the consumer and to yourself to a beer that to your creativity.
I like that. So Megan, where are you looking for?
I mean, you know, kind of, you know, all over the place. I mean, food has always been a huge inspiration. Judging as well is one of the reasons one of the things I found out when I started judging beers was, one, I became a much better brewer because I started to know more and more about beer. I kept learning every time I judge. I learn more about beer from the beers that are in front of me, as well as all the other people that I get to sit and talk with. Mm-hmm. You know, you keep growing and expanding. But flavors from everything, seeing what are people taking in, you know, in whatever consumption space, whether it's food, other beverages, what are the things that are exciting people. actually have a personal, a little pet project I've been pushing at Sam Adams since about 2017 or so, which are, pretty much internal, which are, cocktail inspired beers. And, had a, very had some lengthy discussions with Jim about where, how do they add value to the drinker? Like if someone wants a cocktail, they're just going to get a cocktail. I'm like, that's not the point.
Right.
Because I love cocktails, but I also love beer. And, communicating that, that inspiration, this is a way to reach, it is a great way to reach people with, who don't necessarily fancy themselves to be beer drinkers, but can see, where's that inspiration coming from? That you can do this with beer. It's not going to taste like, I did a Blood and Sand, which is a Scotch-based cocktail. Yeah. Which, there's not a lot of those, and it's a little harder to mimic in beer than something that might be more like classically similar, like a Manhattan. Very much easier to achieve those notes. So some of it's the personal challenge, but also to reach like a different audience.
Yeah. Devin?
So, as I said, a lot of it's from, say, where I want to be drinking the beer, writing it backwards, but I'll also do that with people. Like I will ask a customer, hey, where would you want to be? What would your ideal beer be? And I never ask a style. I specifically say, don't say a style. List off what it would be, like from a flavor component. Like list off, I want to be doing this, and I want it to taste like blah, blah, blah. So like one of the things that we came out with that's actually on the docket to brew soon, turns out that it's like a smoked ESB. Okay. And that was because he
sold.
Yeah. And he wrote out this thing, and I'm like, okay, I understand where we're going with this. And then when you look at it as a whole, you're like, okay, that's what this is. That's not a style, but okay, this can be very real. It kind of came down to smoke and orange marmalade. Like that was kind of where we narrowed down the flavor profile to. So I like to play that game with people of when do you want to be drinking, where do you want to be at, and let's write a thing together, because that just challenges me and it's fun.
Yeah. So one of the things though that, because I like that place-based drinking idea, and who's it, Off Color in Chicago has their beer for baseball games, or beers for hot dogs, or beers for like whatever, like, and it's kind of fun, beers for Taco Tuesday night, like kind of thing. And it's fun to put it into that thought or in that space, but we're focusing so much on like the flavors inside of the glass, but one thing that I feel has been lost in the last couple of years is that there's not as many beer dinners anymore. There's not as many pairings. Last night here at Blackfly Beer Camp, Christian from Common Roots, did a beer pairing with the dishes that the chef had come up with, and it was fun to have that experience again, because sometimes if you want a beer that goes well with a burger, or you want a beer that goes well with insert dish here, or this kind of flavor here. And I'm wondering if inspiration for any beers that you all have made recently sort of fit into like, yes, I want this with this dish, or I feel like, the flavors are complementary in the glass that's going to match on the plate. Because that's another way of bringing people in that I feel like has kind of gone by the wayside in the last.
I feel like beer started becoming
COVID,
food.
but yeah.
Beer started becoming food.
Sure,
we wanted fried chicken in beer, not beer to go with fried chicken.
Right, exactly.
So I agree.
You picked wrong, dude.
Yeah, right. So I think that's a great point where I typically don't come from, I want this to pair with this thing first, but I will then go back to that and be like, oh, I actually really love these things together. And then in the tap room, we'll talk about that. Like, you drink this, you should also eat this with it. You should have this. You should try this. That's on the back end for me, usually not the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a really good point that we seem to have missed that. We seem to have lost that. But it does seem like that just the overall attention span has gotten a little shorter for for people overall. So to think of committing time and energy to those types of events, people aren't going to do it today the same way that we were doing it 10 years ago. So like Devin, I've probably shifted more to focusing on the beverage as the centerpiece, and then then we do think about what it would go with. So one of the things we do at our pre-shifts at the tap room every day is we kind of go around to to everyone. It doesn't matter whether you're a bartender or whether you're the food runner or the person running the merch desk. It's like, okay, give me an app, give me app, entree, dessert. What would you pair this beer with? And at first it seemed like people were felt like it was like a little bit of a game, and so we're being a little silly. But as it's gone on, people are actually, we're giving everyone something to think about too. And that's our own people, and hopefully, and not all of them even like beer. You don't always like beer if you're like just a food runner or just running the merchandise desk. Okay. But getting them to actually think something about what would this beer go with? Oh, I can see what these flavors would go with.
I like that. Tony, you're nodding vigorously. You have been this whole time.
Well, I agree with you all, but my job is really easy because it's a pizzeria, so it's just pizza and beer. So I don't really have to worry about it.
But there's toppings, and there's,
I don't know.
and there's also lazy pairings with pizza where it's just, for a long time, beer and pizza. And it's like, but what kind of beer? Like, I mean, I've always thought, like an English mild goes best with like a cheese pizza, or, there's other things that are beyond the American light lager.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at our tap list, it's kind of evolved into that way where we have a lot of offerings, but they're all like kind of lower ABV where you can drink 3 of them and have your big pizza and you feel really good afterwards. So it's kind of naturally gone that way, but we try to keep a variety. I mean, as far as pairing, like I don't know, I don't really know too much about that, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I like to eat my beer too.
You like to eat your beer, yeah. Can we talk about creativity in the ABV space? Because, you're saying low ABV, and we're in this weird pendulum swing again where there's a lot of high ABV beers that are out there. And if you look at, sales of some of the top sellers, it's these 9.5% overly sweet, hazy IPAs on things. And, it's not for me, but clearly they're doing well, and people are kind of looking for that, and then either trying to find flavors to mask those alcohol in there or doing other things to it. But then there's also some really neat, 3-4% beers that are canvassing as well. And, where does creativity come into ABV wise? I'll just sort of throw that out as a jump ball to anybody who wants to.
I mean, my first response, my knee-jerk response would be style. So if I'm like looking to make like a Belgian triple, I mean, obviously I'm going to make it higher ABV.
Session triple.
Yeah.
By the way, Delirium Tremens just came out with an alcohol-free version.
Oh.
Which, explain that to me. Like, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. Like, not living up to the name.
Yeah.
But that's where I start. And but generally, I prefer balance. It kind of goes with your identity. So like I prefer balance in my beers. The only time I'm ever going to make something that's in the 8, 9, 10% range is when I start doing imperial stouts, which I love, and barley wine, or Belgians. So I like that, but I don't really deviate too much because I'm also kind of old school when it comes to brewing. So that's kind of where I look at it. I don't know what you guys think.
I mean, especially coming to the low ABV beers, I think that the inspiration and the real challenge is making them taste like something with very limited. You're going to be using in all likelihood less grain. Finding that, so you're probably going to have lower potential for a lower body. Figuring out how to actually brew properly, that you can either get a bigger body if that's what you're looking for, using your mash temperature, your mash regime and things like that. But also being able to create a beer that can buoy a lot of flavor. Yeah. Because unless you're trying to just make yet another light lager, which are great.
Yeah.
But to give more flavor options, not actually having a base underneath that can still carry and deliver a lot of flavor. Can be a real challenge at that low alcohol level.
Absolutely.
And that's where like Radler comes in. We had one last night that's low ABV, and it had a lot of flavor, but it had that lemonade
that
was
oomph
awesome.
to it as well. Like there's a little bit of a zip to it where.
And if you would have told me that it was 2% without telling me anything else, I'd have been like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
It has it.
It was not 2% though, right? It was
it's like
4.5. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
explains everything.
Imperial Radler.
Yeah.
Imperial Radler.
Somebody did that a couple of years ago. That might have been Leinenkugel or something came out with an 8-9% Imperial Radler, and it was just like at this point, just take your Fanta and put vodka in it, and just like call it a day, and like let's stop kidding ourselves.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, Devin. Yeah.
For me, sounding repetitive, it goes back to the occasion. Am I writing that beer for an occasion that I'm going to be canoeing all day? Or am I writing that beer for an occasion where I'm sitting by the fire at the end of the night? That will definitely dictate ABV. Do I want that warming? Do I not? Is the occasion I'm hanging out all day drinking it? What am I doing with it? So that dictates a lot of that recipe formulation side. Yeah. But I also think, as a larger beer industry thing, there's a big juxtaposition between what people are drinking on premise versus those 19.2s of hazy as road sodas. So I think there's a big difference there.
Yeah, I absolutely. We were talking just before about, like other drinks and cocktails and things like that. But there also seemed to be a trend for a while where brewers were going to farmers markets or doing these cool international trips and getting inspired and coming back and finding, new to them ingredients and then just kind of running, trials on it. And we're starting to see some of that happen, culturally. New things are coming into beer and beer flavor. Garrett Oliver is working very hard for Fonio these days to get that ancient grain into beers, and there's some modest success. I think that's happening with that and sort of taking off a little bit more. But in your books, Tony, and in your brewing, do you look for outside inspiration from your typical lanes, your typical comfort zones?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I try to look for inspiration in any way. And I think a little bit going back to Devin's point about like, we only know what is happening in front of us in our tap room. And, building a beer based on experience, I think is so key, how do you feel when you're like, where's that intangible that you're trying to achieve when you're like, I don't know, in Belgium drinking in a alley bar with a bunch of locals out of a schooner, or you're at Delirium Tremens drinking beer out of a boot, which I have done.
The NA?
It was not the NA.
Yeah. The NA out of a dirty dress shoe. It's what you deserve.
But of course,
sorry, I'm gonna get hate mail now, and I'm here for it. Like, don't.
And even like when you're talking about like traveling experience, like even like looking at what Em's doing with, the art and stuff, like look, like how does, she's probably the best person to ask about this, is like, how do you get inspired by art through beer or vice versa? I think that's like really valuable. And I did a music pairing for a long time. When I would write a description for the beer, I'd be like, pair this with whatever I was listening to at the time. And it kind of inspired me. So you can find it in any way. You just have to open yourself up to it, I think.
Yeah. Does that match for you all as well?
It does, but being 99% grown in New England, we
Sure.
do not look abroad.
Right, yeah.
But that is also more of finding out what are we growing here that's interesting.
Yeah.
That to me is a big part of it. Like I had an idea for a beer, and then it was finding someone who grows ginger. And so it's, that sort of thing. So it's figuring out what do we grow here well, what's interesting, working with different herbs. So for me, it's a little bit of the opposite way of let's find what we're doing here and showcasing it.
That is a really nice thing to get to do, to get to kind of sort of identify and connect with in your community too. So it's great to get, I've definitely gotten that from when I've been judging. You'll come across an ingredient that someone's listed on a label of a beer you're judging, like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And then you want to find out, especially if it was delicious. You want to check that out and explore. I've been playing with Fonio too. Just it's wicked expensive right now.
Oh yeah.
So it's not very practical at the moment, but if it gets adopted, because there is a lot of just environmental benefit to using it as well too, because it's a regenerative. It doesn't require irrigation. That something could be very positive with this grain, and that could make it more accessible. But also getting and connecting with your local farmers and and vendors and and makers as well too. Finding ways to just deepen those roots and and even get to learn more about what's actually going on in your own backyard.
Creating that relationship.
Yes.
There's also a fun thing there that, say if I do try a beer and it's an ingredient that we can't get or we're unwilling to because our business model, then there's a way that I also think about and say, oh, they have this flavor. How else do I get to that point without using that ingredient? Because typically, you got there via one ingredient, but there's 1,000 ways to get somewhere. And so I will look at that and say, okay, how do I get to that flavor using the things that we can use? Which is fun.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I kind of wanted to kind of bring that back to Lavender as well, in that, all three of you could get a Lavender beer recipe, but then you're going to make it your own. You could get the same recipe. You're going to kind of make it your own. And it's that, it kind of ties into what we were talking about at the beginning, though, but like your individual brewer style of, do you want something to be over the top? Do you want it to be more layered or more nuanced? When you're working with special ingredients, especially for the first time and you're running these tinctures and you're running these trials, is there an aha moment when you hit what it is, or is it, by a jury? Is it by, just like, let's see what the people think and Jesus take the wheel kind of thing? Like, is there, like, how do you know when you've locked on to something that has earned it, like, I like this enough to do this again?
I have found that the more I lean into the more I like something, the more people are responding to it. If I strictly go off of this is how I want this thing to be, the few times I've done something like, oh no, I think people would like it better if I do it this way. Let's just see what happens. It doesn't work as well. If I lean into and I say, let me do it 100% the way I want and whatever that is, then I think I'm also more excited about it. And then I can talk about it better. And being that most of our beer goes through the tap room or through restaurants that know us, then it's a much easier sell.
Yeah.
Well, you can also then convey that to anyone else who's selling it. Your enthusiasm, especially on premise. But even if you're working with people, if it's going out in distribution and it's your salespeople selling it outside, if you can communicate effectively like why your excitement and passion for it, that's going to translate, and then then your salespeople can pick that up as well too and communicate that enthusiasm and the why. And this kind of goes back to the original, the why behind something.
I'm going to quote one of my dear mentors from the first brewing job I ever had, and he would say, "Fuck you, you bought it."
Wow. All right.
Sorry, I cursed.
No, that's fine. It's I have no problem with that. But boy, that's but there is something about brewer passion, right? I mean, and I talk to a lot of brewers who, especially at some larger places that have well-known beers where they're like, "Yep, we just show up, we clock in, we do the job, we go home," and like they sell really well, but there's not a lot of the passion behind it. But I think the smaller you are, or the more hands-on you are, where maybe with your brewery office where you're in a fishbowl that everybody can see when they're there, if you're excited about it, there's that personal connection as well, and that's that sort of intangible that is tough to, if you're not excited about it, then why should anybody be?
And then there's the thing of, say, in our tap room, where if I'm excited about it and then we get our mug club, which we call our best friends club, and then they get excited about it, and then they're actually the salesmen to other people in there. They do the work for us at this point. They're the ones recommending, you want this one next, you want this, but that comes from getting that core group of people excited about it first. In the same way of getting your sales reps excited about it for whatever reason that may be. And there was a time when I brewed this. It was a really cool, like, Australian IPA or pale, and it had this awesome little hint of mint right at the back end. And I was super excited for this little touch of herbal note. And I said to the sales guy, and then I found out 2 weeks later that in the market, he's selling it as a mint IPA.
Oh, no.
So then you'd be very careful about the words that you're using when portraying that. I was overly excited about this tiny, tiny little note, and that did not work well.
No.
Yeah.
No, because people, where's the mint?
Right.
The expectation's
exactly.
been
Yeah.
set. But then again, where's the mint? Was it supposed to hit you in the face, or was it supposed to be nuanced or balanced in there? I mean,
Sure.
Even at that, But yeah, if the message that's being communicated is it's a mint IPA, the expectation is being set for, I should get that. I should know that there's mint in this.
Yes.
Oh.
Question for you both. How many times have you made a beer not intending it to be having the flavor profile that you wanted to be subtle, and it was not subtle? It was very overpowering. Has that ever happened?
I've gone the other way.
Oh, yeah.
I don't often, because typically I like my beers a little more delicate.
Sure, yep.
I'll typically undershoot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I wish I had a little bit more in there.
Actually, that is great advice, though. If you're ever not sure, always go a little lower.
Yeah.
Just in general.
Yeah, you can't take it back.
Yeah.
And it's a you can't take back the soapy lavender if you go too far with that. And this was a beer too, that this was one of these, a little bit of a Jesus take the wheel moment, because I've brewed with lavender before, but usually with a lot of other botanicals, and this was the first time that I was doing it with the tea and just the cocoa as well. So like, well,
Yeah.
It's kind of a hope and a prayer, and it turned out the way I had hoped. But because we went sparingly, and it wound up being a really nice interplay, and balance of ingredients. You get like just enough of everything, but no one's going to say, "Oh, that's a lavender beer." Like, it's part of the larger, part of the larger thing.
I get it.
Yeah.
So as you're playing with these flavors, what kind of quantity are you investing in this experiment?
Yeah. I mean, how much are you buying of any ingredient that you get? Like, is it small? Is that fair? Like, are you getting bushels of?
Is it a big, stainless barrel like we see at Sam Adams Brewing, or is it smaller?
I think it depends, and you probably can answer this a little bit better because you are much bigger, but it also depends on the ingredient and how wacky it is. So if it's wacky and expensive, like maybe we'll do some bench trials. So, we'll have a beer and we'll do, like you said, like grab a neutral beer, make a tincture, whatever. And then cost. I mean, for us, cost is huge, where... we have to make sure the beer is profitable. Yeah. So, and I'm not saying there isn't room for a beer that is just vanity and just fun and is very expensive, but there are bills to pay too. It completely depends on the ingredient and availability too. So
Yeah, I mean, definitely that the scale is a big part of it. When I was doing R&D, we would be doing things just like 10 gallons at a time. But that's just for testing out something before we're even going on a recipe. But right now I'm generally not doing that. I'm just brewing 4.5 barrels at a time. Like, all right, again, strap on, and we're gonna go for it.
Those are things that we would do in our first couple years of brewing. We're only doing that because we have an idea of where the ingredients that we're using are going to take us. It's like we can do larger batches on new things because you're writing the recipe and you know where it's going.
Or you have the experience.
Yeah.
Or if it's even something that is a little newer to you, then another smart thing to do that I think we all do is we call each other. We talk to other brewers who have used these ingredients and we know have used them well. Said, hey, I'm going to we build these, we collaborate, we build these relationships, and we are lucky enough that it is still a fairly collegial industry that I can call someone up and say, hey, like you did this, you do this ingredient really well, and what the hell did you do there? Because I want to know, I want to figure out how to do it. So let me get your experience. And like, sure. Generally, people are happy to share that kind of knowledge to save you from some heartache. And you're never going to you're not duplicating their recipe. We're all looking for guidance from each other because the more better beer that's out there, the better it is for all of us. I don't want someone to go out there making bad beer. If I can help someone just with even some information to make sure that what they put out there is good, you don't want to risk people thinking beer is bad.
Yeah. We'll open it up to questions in a minute, but Tony, where do you want to take this the home stretch?
We can take the questions. We have 10 minutes.
But I mean, you still have notes. So what do you want to learn from Megan and Devin here? It's
I don't know.
What didn't I copy from your iPhone to my?
Do we have a lot of homebrewers in here right now? Like 3 or 4. Okay.
Right.
Well, we were going to talk about some brewing calculations, but if you homebrewers want to talk to me or any of us afterwards,
we can save that for the homebrew.
The
homebrew panel,
so we don't bore everybody with recipe to actual putting pen on paper.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yes.
What made you put cocoa in with the lavender?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, why cocoa in with the lavender and tea?
Yeah. Oh, my
and
head,
Earl Grey. Yeah.
My head with the cocoa was that really more balancing with the tea. Actually, just kind of thinking that could just bring out like a little deeper note of the tea, and then the tea would both those two together would kind of tone down the potential for going overboard with lavender, because like I said, that big thing with the lavender is that it can just be walking this little line of just floral potpourri soap, like kind of like cilantro but just like that just really can get very unpleasant. So just finding like thinking about like a nice balance, knowing that like a lot of teas do have that can have that kind of like chocolatey cocoa kind of note to them. So
okay.
Yeah, No, I didn't. It actually kicked right before I left. So I'll give you a little. So the beers that I did bring were actually some, the leftover bottles from our World Beer Cup entries. So there was the Norwegian Wood was a Kvik barrel-aged barley wine aged in Utopias barrels. Land of the Goths was a Gothslandrika, so a little juniper and also a Kvik fermentation. Actually, everything kind of was. It's kind of funny.
Okay.
And then the Autograph was a collaboration with the Angry Orchard Brewery or cidery in Walden, New York. They brought us 4 barrels of fresh pressed apple juice from the cidery. We topped that up with a full 4 barrels of freshly brewed wort, fermented them together, and then aged it in some of their apple brandy barrels. So
Wild.
So
Yeah.
kind of some wild stuff. Was the end of the bottles.
There's a question in the back.
So, with the Earl Grey, was it a combination of Earl Grey and lavender in the beer? Or were they separate experiments?
No, they're both in the same. It's all in the same beer.
Okay, so my question is, where could you get a sample of that? Like, you have to go just to your...
You have to go to the tap room. You have to go to the
Yeah. And now you're gonna have to brew it again because it just kicked.
I am going to brew it
So
again, actually.
you are? Okay.
Yeah.
Like quickly, or are you gonna make people wait for it?
I'm actually going to be brewing it again so that it will come out for the end of August.
All right. Set
of
your
August, early
calendar for
Beer Camp Volume 2.
right exactly. Sean has a question.
What's the most abstract thing that you've come up with that turned out way better than what you thought it was going to be?
The most abstract thing you've come up with that came out way better than you thought it was going to be. Boy, you've stumped them.
Or had like a better crowd response than you thought?
Yeah, or better crowd response.
There's one that comes to mind for me personally is I made a saison that used roasted beets in it. It was called Beating a Dead Horse.
Love it.
Yeah. And it was an imperial saison, and I wanted it to be around 8% alcohol, bottle conditioned with Brett. So the Brett was the only Brettanomyces is a wild yeast. So you got earthy beets, and I just love beets, and that earthy character that horse blankety, like really earthy character that you get from Brett, and it turned out to be just fucking phenomenal. And to the point where like I made it like 4 or 5 times, and I won a gold medal at the New York competition for it. So I was like, wow, that's cool. And then everybody's like, I don't like beets, but this is really good and stuff. And also one thing you got to remember, and this is where like experimentation and inspiration, all this stuff kind of comes in. Beets do have a lot of sugar in them.
Yeah.
And I kind of expected that, but I didn't expect it to be that much. Since that's
Robust
where
fermentation.
It's simple sugar, so the yeast just loved it. And so it ended up being like 8.5%, 9% alcohol. I think I was shooting for like 7, but it didn't matter when after tasting it, after kind of giving it to friends, after trying it, and it was just beautiful red, nice white head, and I was just so proud of that beer. So that was one example.
I love that. Megan, do you have one?
I'm trying to think of one recently, and one that was just again kind of a bit of a surprise at how well received it was a golden ale with pineapple and basil, and we got some really really beautiful basil character out of it, and just how well the flavors went together, but how didn't know if anyone was going to actually respond to it or think that the basil in the beer would be too polarizing, but it was remarkably popular and has been asked to be brought back too.
Okay, I love that.
I would say the same thing with the herbs. We have like a kettle sour series, and it's always a fruit and an herb combo. And the herbs are what keep people drinking it, because the fruit, obviously, people know they like fruited sours, but it's the herb side of it that keeps people coming back for more. And they're like, well, that's different than anything I've had. I want more of that. And I didn't expect that to happen. Yeah. Along with our, again, botanical, but our nasturtium saison. So nasturtiums kind of should go with a saison, but at the volume of which people drink it is insane.
Wild. Okay. Yeah.
Question
Oh, yeah,
for
there's a
Greg.
question.
So you mentioned sours
Yeah.
and fruit beers. Are you finding there is more of an audience now for those types of beers as opposed to the very strong, what do you want to call them, piney IPAs?
Our sours.
Yeah, they
Fruit beer, yeah.
I think fruited sours sell well.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
They're some of our fastest sellers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a tough thing. Like most fruited sours are really easy sells. When you get into the mixed fermentation, like Belgian style sours, they're a little bit of a harder sell because they're so expensive. But they're far more complex. But yeah, I think they don't really taste like beer, so the non-beer drinkers generally leans towards that a little bit, which it'll sell better. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we'll do one last question and then we're gonna hang out for a minute. How do you come up with the names for your beers?
One time I made a smoked sour with smoked wheat in it, and it was called Smoked Wheat Every Day. And I thought that was funny because I was listening to some music that was inspiring me.
Right.
I don't know. You sometimes you're just shooting the shit with your friends, and you're like, "That's a great beer name," or whatever, or puns, or whatever.
Yeah, that happens a lot. Like, nobody ever takes my ideas because they don't want to get canceled. But yeah, I've helped name a couple of beers, and it's usually just we're sitting around bullshitting, and it's like, oh yeah, we should call it that, and it's like, oh yeah, like that's
Or like Will and I were sitting around one night at a bar.
Will Myers.
Will Myers and I were sitting
Cambridge
around
Brewing.
one night at a bar being, grumpy old brewers. This is a long time ago about, we're like, raising our fists in the air about the hazy IPAs and how IPAs used to be clear. So I was thinking that, the old Simpsons, old man yells at cloud. So I was like, old man yells at cloudy IPA. I told him he could use it, and he didn't. I'm like, all right, you're not using it. I'm going to use it now. I'm taking it back.
That's so good. That's a good one. It's a good one. Yeah, and all of the Simpsons fans are immediately just going to buy that beer because Simpsons. Yeah.
Yeah. Most of ours tie back to the occasion that I wrote the recipe for. So
Sure.
it's pretty simple. Yeah, for us, that's a pretty simple one.
That's
awesome.
All right, last question.
Super quick. Is there any flavor or ingredient or just creative concept that has entirely bedeviled you?
Flavor, ingredient, or concept that has completely bedeviled you. I'm just repeating for the folks at home.
NA Delirium, maybe?
NA Delirium. Yeah.
I'm still working on my Negroni beer. I'm not there yet. It's good, but it's not great. I'm still a Negroni inspired.
That's a mixture of flavors.
Yeah, it's some very interesting flavors. So much complexity, and I've sat there with plenty of other people too, with each ingredient too. So we'll have all the cocktail ingredients, and we're trying to just really, again, when you're trying to do these cocktail inspired beers, understanding the ingredients and the components and what they each bring to it, to then figure out how can I make the inspiration clear in a beer. I don't think I'm never going to mimic a Negroni in a beer completely, but make sure that the inspiration is closer to what I want. And it's getting better, but I'm not there yet. But I'm still trying to just pick that one apart.
Yeah. Devin, do you have one?
No, not really. I was going to say, but I'm looking forward to when there is.
Okay. Goals, aspiration. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing about beer, and kind of why I'm in love with it is that you can kind of do anything you want, and you can create anything you want. You can use any ingredient you want, and you can get inspiration from anywhere. That's why I think this topic is so interesting. And if you can't figure it out, you got someone who can, and you can cheat a little bit here and there too. And it's just, I don't know. I can't think of anything right now, but yeah, when you do, let me know.
Yeah.
Call me up and we'll figure it out together.
Yeah. Well, with that, I want to thank Devin and Megan and Tony for this great panel, and for all of you for hanging out. So,
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Again, my thanks to the panel and to Great Camp Sagamore for hosting such a cool weekend in the woods. We're going to do it again next year, so stay tuned to this show, and we'll announce the details as soon as they're available. In the meantime, go visit allaboutbeer.com, where you can check out new content as well as the archives, which go all the way back to 1979. You can always reach me anytime on email at johnholl, that's JOHNHOLL, at allaboutbeer.com. Follow us on social media at allaboutbeer. And seriously, go to the website, sign up for our newsletter, and support us if you can, just by going to allaboutbeer.com/support. Before we run, here is a word from the folks that actually support us and help us out. It's our sponsors.
Calling all hopheads. Dogfish Head's 60-minute IPA is a fantastically hoppy India Pale Ale that's beautifully balanced thanks to their unique continual hopping method. Delivering a pungent hop flavor that isn't crushingly bitter, 60 Minute is continually hopped throughout the boil for a full 60 minutes. Starting to see where the name comes from? Check out dogfish.com to learn more and to find some 60 Minute near you. Dogfish Head Craft Brewery, Milton, Delaware. Please drink responsibly.
Today's episode is brought to you by Stomp Stickers. Stomp makes it easy for breweries to stock up on the essential packaging and promotional supplies all in one place. From beer labels and keg collars to coasters, beer boxes, and more, they've got you covered. Plus, every product is backed by their 100% satisfaction guarantee, and their full-time support squad is ready to help anytime. Visit stompstickers.com and use code THINKBEER for 15% off of your first order. Market. Beer 30 handles the entire brewing workflow, from recipe development to production. Once your beer is brewed and ready, it seamlessly manages your inventory and streamlines your brewery's sales and distribution, all in the same easy-to-use platform. Beer 30 lets you get back to the beer and to the people that made you fall in love with this industry in the first place. And no other brewery management software gives you the ability to truly master your business and get the insights that you need to thrive in an increasingly competitive industry. Visit thefifthingredient.com/allaboutbeer today to learn more and receive 3 free months of Beer 30. If you like other beer podcasts, and I hope you do, we have a podcast channel, an All About Beer channel. There you can listen to the All About Beer podcast, which is co-hosted by Don Tess and M. Souter. And we also have the Brewer to Brewer podcast, which is filled with really smart, interesting conversations. So search All About Beer on your podcast platform of choice and give a listen. Steal This Beer still has new episodes every Monday. The BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. There's a lot of beer audio content that's out there these days. But on this show, Nate Schweber does our music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.